What's up, pod pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are checking out Podcasting Business School. This is the show where I teach podcasters how to love their show like a hobby, but build it like a business. And if you are in search of some podcasting tips around podcast monetization, podcast growth, how to create a business around your show, and today, how to scale that business so you can achieve goals beyond your wildest dreams, you are in the right place, pod pals. I've got my friend Natasha Miller in the house, and I cannot wait to pick her brain on all things podcasting business. She's one of my favorite and most interesting new people that has been injected into my world. And I always get so curious about people's backgrounds, how they're using their show to grow their business, and how it fits into the whole framework. So, Natasha Miller, welcome to Podcasting Business School.
Thank you, Adam. I feel very, very welcome. And I love your intro and your intrigue in me.
Well, I'm just naturally curious. That kind of comes with being a podcaster, right? Like, we're kind of curious people, and people always have interesting stories. So the first story I want you to tell, like, you've got an amazing Inc. 5000 business going on, and you've got this mega brand that's really popping. Tell me the story about why you decided, hey, I need to start a podcast, and where it all fits in.
You know who the one person that really made me think I needed to do the podcast is on your Dream 100. Do you know who that is?
Amy Porterfield.
Yeah.
She's my dream one, not 100. She's number one.
Okay.
In my heart and in my mind.
She's pretty cute too. I took her Digital Course Academy last year, and I was really just starting my own personal brand, separate from my performing career, separate from my Inc. 5000 3 times in a year. Sorry, 3 times in a row company. So a third entity. And, you need to build an email list, and you need to get people to know, like, and trust you. And one of the methods that she had mentioned would be, an opportunity to do that is a podcast. And since I'm a performer and am not shy at all to sing in front of 40,000 people, the national anthem a cappella, once you get to that level, you can do anything, like anything. So podcasting was it. And I had a very good friend, Josh Copel, who had just launched his, and it's very successful. It's very niche down. It's for the restaurant industry. And he helped me figure it out. There was a little bit of imposter syndrome, even though I've recorded 7 albums in a recording studio. I had a show called The Entire Variety Show for my core business that we did every month during the pandemic, where I interviewed someone for 15 minutes in each show. So you would have thought that it was a slam dunk. But in my mind, it wasn't as easy and as simple. But truth be told, it actually is. So if somebody like me sees a speed bump and takes some time to get over it, then I can imagine people that don't have my experience sees podcasting as a much bigger deal and has a much bigger speed bump.
Yeah. And I see it all the time as I help people launch shows. Just like we start getting through the first half of the material, they're like, yeah, logo, name, awesome. And then it's like, all right, let's record your first episode. The brakes start to pump, and they're like whenever I tried to load my Labrador Retriever into the car to get a bath, it's like legs are going everywhere. Like, no, I won't go in. So that's definitely there. Let's talk about that a little bit, because you are a seasoned performer. You are a seasoned interviewer. Like, what tips would you have for somebody that is a little bit nervous? Things I hear all the time. I hate my voice. I don't have a personality for this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can we build that muscle up a little bit, other than obviously just getting in reps and doing interviews? But like, any advice on top of that from a performance perspective?
So hating your voice, you just have to get over it. You're hearing your voice in a way that the other people aren't hearing it. So what comes out of your mouth may be amazing to someone else. Also, it's always going to not sound very good to someone, period, end of story. Like for me, for singers, I like a lot of singers, and there are a lot of people that like Natalie Merchant. an old female singer songwriter. I can't stand her voice. It makes me want to just cringe. That's just me. But she's a very famous, very well paid singer. So just get over it. That, and if you don't have an animated personality, I would say ratchet it up by 20%. If you don't have that naturally, it's a little bit acting, it's a little bit emphasis. But if you think about how it's making your guest feel and what it's doing to bring out the best information and experience for that guest and for your listeners, then it doesn't seem as fake.
One of the best pieces of speaking advice that I ever got was somebody told me to imagine my speaking voice as like in song form. And are you
Mm.
playing at the same pace on the same note over and over and over again? Or are you shifting things up? Does the pitch come up? Does it come down as your energy, waxes and wanes? So
Yeah.
that really helped me a lot. Am I playing one note when I'm talking or not?
No one
And
note sambas in podcasting.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So excellent advice. Let's talk about how your show is fitting into your business ecosystem right now. It's like I said, you've got a lot going on, and this is a personal brandish show, but really like that still feeds into other things you've got cooking. So could you describe where it fits into your overall formula right now?
Yes. So it's not geared at all to my core business, Entire Productions, or my performing career, but it's not hurting it either. And I think some things will trickle down organically into those two funnels. My new brand, which is helping entrepreneurs to scale and grow their companies efficiently with metrics, with systems and processes, all that very sexy stuff. And my demographic are people that have a $300,000 to $5 million annual recurring revenue business that also have teams. So with my podcast, I'm interviewing people that have $1 million or more annual recurring revenue business and have 2 or more employees, because I want the podcast to show people how other people are doing it. And so it's just part of the flywheel. So there's the podcast. I have a book coming out on March 22nd next year. I'm creating a digital course that will flow into a paid community of people supporting each other with some coaching. And then there's a 1% mastermind for people that are really high performers. It's a lot. And it's a lot to have been created in the last calendar year. So the Fascinating Entrepreneurs podcast is really, it's the only thing that's super live right now out there in the world.
But the thing that I like is that you've got all this other ideal listener / ideal customer journey. It's mapping out, like the steps are there. Now you're just building it out. And with the podcast, you're brand building, your audience building, you're building the know, like, and trust factor, the expert positioning, so that when you do, I think it's almost better if you don't have a way to monetize or something to push people to right away. Because sometimes I call it premature monetization. Happens to the best of us. It like we get in there a little early, and our audience is like, "Ooh, they got a little pushy up front. We need to have a few more dates here." So, like, I think that's going to play to your advantage. And
I
the way
think we're on 37 dates if you start from the beginning. So I'll have people warmed up and ready to go.
isn't that a Drew Barrymore movie? 37? No, that's something. So I think, yeah, when you flip that switch, I've got some friends in the health space that they built just a YouTube and podcasting Death Star. They had like 5 million YouTube followers, just giant audience, never sold a thing. They launched one recipe book and they don't have to work anymore. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, they just
I'll take that.
absolutely crushed it. And they're sponsored by like Starbucks and like big brands. So I could see you just really seeing success like that. And, I hope our listeners today caught on to your avatar description and how specific that was. Like, where you can help people, where they need to be, and what they need to have in place for you to be like, all right, you're an ideal guest for my show, and this is ideal for my listeners. So when it comes to developing that avatar, let's talk about that a little bit.
I will also say that it's a little awkward when people are asking you to be on your show to say, do you fit these requirements? If not, it's a no. And
Yeah.
I have this email that I send out that says exactly what I'm looking for. And right now I'm not wavering. So if you don't have $1 million annual recurring revenue business and don't have a team, then you're not going to be on my show. I may change that in the future, but for now, and it probably for the first year, that's what it's going to be. I'm going to honor my work and my listeners, and it actually honors everyone, really. Um, and the way I came up with that avatar, again, was studying digital marketing, understanding that you can't serve everyone. I knew that already. And really drilling down. And honestly, my niche, I mean, $300,000 to $5 million in annual recurring revenue, that's a pretty big
Yeah.
group of people. But I know that once we get into 10 million, 20 million, I can help those people on some things, but not on everything. And by that time, they typically have a full-time CFO, a full-time COO, and a lot of people hired to fill in the gaps where their strengths aren't. So that's how I came up with it, and it's working so far.
Well, I love the fact that you know who you can help and who you can't help as much. You know your wheelhouse. That's a huge mistake that I see so many people in the online business space, especially. They're like, I want to be the everything for everybody guy. And I'm going to FOMO. Like they're so afraid of shutting somebody out as they may not make that dollar from them. But like you understand this really well. If that person comes into your world, you can't help them as much. And they're probably going to be a pain in the ass for you as well. Like it's going to be, there's friction there
Right.
naturally. So that I feel like that's really, really important.
It also
Now,
puts me in a place of power to an extent, right? To be able to turn people down.
yeah,
I don't want to do that and hurt anyone's feelings, but there is a certain cutoff, and people may think, after they hear that somebody has been turned down or can't get on the show, wow, I like some people are like, I'm going to make that amount. Literally, there's one woman that she's like, I'm going to hit that 1 million so I can be on your show. And I'm like, I'm
sweet.
inspiring people to drive more revenue just so they can get on the show. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. I think it's almost like an exclusive club. People don't want to go to the restaurant that like there's no wait in line for. They want to go to the one where there's the line out the door. You're like, that's where they want to be. And that's what you're creating with your show environment there. And I encourage you wholeheartedly, stick to your guns on that. And like it's when we start to waver from that, our interviews start to our audience can tell that like we're out of our zone of genius. And
I want to mention another thing, Adam, that I'm just recently experiencing, and it's a major PR firm that I know well. We've worked together, and they're trying to pitch someone to me that meets the requirements on paper, but I could just tell that this particular entrepreneur really wasn't running his own show. And I passed, and they hit me hard. Well, what he does, this and that. And I ended up saying, you know what? It's not the right fit for my audience. And I'm not sure he would even be able to have a great interview with me. Like if I asked questions about EBITDA and company culture and things that I had a feeling he wasn't going to be able to respond to, that wouldn't have been a good thing. And then I would have wasted his time, my time, and I probably would not have aired it.
yeah. Well, I've had a few of those Mercy interviews myself in my day, like with over 600 episodes in the tank now, like a few of those happen every once in a while. And you learn your lesson because you're like, wow, that wasn't great. And when do I air this? And then
Yeah.
if I don't air it, how do I explain that to the person who's like all fired up? So you have that kind of pain experience. Like, I don't want to do that again. So you don't let them in from the first place. You know, what's weird is one of the things that podcasters love to do is intro each other. And that's something that like I've introed you to people, but I'm like, I always check in with both parties. I'm like, hey, are you accepting interviews? Look at this person. Are you interested in this person? Is this a good fit? I can make this connection. And I'm like, don't feel like I'm guilting you into this. I'm not making any money or anything from that relationship, because I hate it when somebody just emails me or DMs me like, hey,
Oh yeah.
I've got this great person you should interview. And then all of a sudden I'm like, not a great fit. Like
Yeah.
not a
By
great
the way,
fit.
Adam, I've asked people if I could be on their podcast and they've turned me down. I'll tell you who for certain, like I can give you an example. Kara Golden of Hint Water was on my show. She was promoting her book. She has $100 million business with this, drink that you can buy
Yeah.
at the grocery store. And she has her own podcast and she lives in the Bay Area and we know people in common. And so I sent her this pitch. And basically she said, I'm not interviewing people like you. I'm interviewing, owners, founders of like gigantic companies. She said it more eloquently than that. And I was like, you got it. Like, I
Yeah.
don't fit the bill. And then I said, I have a book coming out in March and I'd love you to consider for me, me for next year. That's a relationship building interchange. Who knows if I'll be on her podcast?
Yeah. Yeah. But we can't have our feelings hurt as podcasters. Like every once in a while, if you do enough podcasts, you'll have somebody that will pitch you like you're on their show. And then like I had somebody that we were live and I was on their show as a guest. I'm like, cool. I'm doing my thing. I'm tearing it up. At the end, they're like, I'd really like to be on your show. And we're still live. She's still recording. And I'm like, okay. You just made it weird officially. And she knew what she was doing.
Wait, good idea. When I have people on my podcast, I'll ask them live if we can schedule a time now to be on their podcast. Thank you for that tip, Adam.
It helps if you take your ring light and flip it around and like shine it right into the camera like they're being interrogated. Yeah, it just got weird. Let's talk about scaling a little bit. This is your jam. This is something that like I don't fit the bill even close to be on your show because I have a VA and a little bit of a team situation, but like not at the zone that you're looking for.
Not yet.
But I know a lot of people that listen into my show, like they have scaling symptoms. So I'm big on identifying symptoms first. So if you think somebody's business is ready to scale, what are they personally feeling? I've got some ideas of what they might be going through. Like, what do they experience? What frustrations, what pain points are they having?
Yeah. So this was me before 2015. I had a business that was very ripe for scaling. I didn't have a great interest. I didn't know or believe or had the confidence in myself that my lifestyle business could be so much bigger. And I wasn't feeling sorry for myself. I was just like, hey, this is it. This is fine. I'm comfortable here. Yeah. But then as people started to want more from us, right, then you don't have the capacity because you haven't planned ahead for capacity. So capacity planning is a term that, not many people use until they are in that scaling and growing mindset. And so you have to hire ahead of the need. So that's number one, right? I don't know if it's number one in the pie chart or the triangle, but also if you want to scale your business and you don't have everything operationally notated, then you can't scale. Period. End of story. Why you can't scale, because that word basically means that you can bring on a lot of people without personally having to train them, and that they can refer back to the training manual or the scope of work and such without too much help. So that's incredibly important. And I know a lot of people with somewhat successful businesses. And when I mean somewhat successful, I mean they have revenue, they have recurring customers. Who knows if they have profit or not? Because that's not necessarily a symptom of scaling, right? And we don't talk about profit that much in the world. Like my Inc. 5,000 3 years in a row, that's an incredible number, right? And that's incredible growth. But did you ask me how much profit I had in those years? No one does. And you know why they don't? Is because they assume things much bigger. Anyway, back to scaling. I could show you a blueprint of how you, Adam, or other podcasters could scale and grow their businesses. However, I will say it's not for everyone. So having employees that you have to nurture and cultivate and care about and pay and bonus out and develop and have benefits for in a 401k, that's a lot of responsibility. And I know because I had $1 million payroll before COVID. Do you know how horrible that felt when our multi-million dollar business went to zero?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was terrifying. So it may not be for everyone. 1099 employees might be your jam, right? And there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of work that goes into scaling a business. So if you're a solopreneur and you're loving it, you may not appreciate the lifestyle of scaling a business. However, if you do it really well, and hopefully you do it really well faster than I did, you get to be the point where you're the visionary and you're not working in the business every day. You're working on it. So for me, I'm working about 20% of my time on entire productions. That's just the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So
There's a lot there. Sorry.
yeah, you put a lot in my brain region on that one, Natasha. So you mentioned like the solopreneur thing. That's kind of where I am. And I came from like in a previous life, I owned a gym and I had 30 employees and hundreds of
Yeah.
members.
How was that?
I hated it.
Yeah.
Like I did. And honestly, I'm kind of a wild entrepreneurial stallion. I've never had a real job ever in my life. I worked at a grocery store when I was 16 for 1 month, realized I could never work for anybody else, and I quit. And since then, I've always been an entrepreneur, whether it's mowing lawns,
Yeah.
doing yard work stuff, personal training, starting a gym, boot camp fitness, all that.
Yeah.
And I'm just that guy. I don't like to go circle back around and go, all right, team, now we're going to get updated and everything. I'm sprinting 3,000 miles an hour in one direction. Everybody better keep up. And they don't like that doesn't work in a team setting. At least it didn't with mine, where there was a lot of complaints and wow, we're changing a lot of things all the time and
But
things
Adam,
like that.
it would have worked if you realized enough profit to bring in management that sat underneath you. So you're the visionary and you are, what is the term? Hold on. An absentee owner. That sounds horrible, doesn't it? But it is the key to selling at a bigger multiple.
Yeah.
When people don't have to rely on the owner, on the visionary to run the business. So I don't love managing people. I have a self-managed team right now, but if we grew further, I'd have to get a general manager, a VP, or somebody, because I'm good at managing like 6 people, and then I start to falter.
Yeah. Yeah. And your limitations. So
Mhm.
let's talk about your journey of scaling a little bit, because you said it seemed like there's a little bit of a bumpy road, some scar tissue built up in there. What were some of the mistakes that you made or some things that we could learn from for somebody that's like, yeah, I'm really into the scaling thing, but I want to do it the right way?
So I think the number one challenge in running any business, and I think every business owner would agree, is people. So finding great talent, figuring out before you even find them how to write a job description that not only says what they're going to do, but the outcomes that are expected, so that you're trying to attract the right people and knowing the right questions to ask. I was horrible at this. Now people wouldn't know that because they think, oh my gosh, their business is so amazing. They do these amazing events, they're scaling, they're in Inc., they're in Entrepreneur Magazine, et cetera, et cetera. But I was firing and people were quitting more than they were staying. And I then learned through this method called the Who method from Jeffrey Smart. I learned from him in person, and then I also read his book. And then I took what he wrote and I put it into play. And what I like to say is education, mentoring, advice, like getting advice, that's the shortcut, right? That's the shortcut from the spaghetti strand, which is basically what I was doing before 2015,
Yeah.
to the straight line.
Yep.
So that's the number one thing. For me, I thought I was so cool doing it myself, not having a formal business education. I liked it when people are like, wow, you're so, entrepreneurial. And I'm like, yeah, like I do it all myself. Well, that was stupid. Um, it worked for me for a little bit with the lifestyle business, but then when I went to the Goldman Sachs 10K SB class, it's a 3-month class, and I learned how to read my financial statements, interpret them, talk to my accountant, CPA. Like I can have a conversation with those professionals where I understand and they understand me, and they're not having to like walk me through and go, oh my God, this girl doesn't know anything. Now, I am not as good as an accountant, right? But I don't need to be. And I started to look at defining who the customer avatar is and getting rid of the things that didn't work. I'll give you an example. I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and I thought that was going to bring us so much business. Well, guess what? It gave us pretty much 0.01% business. And because I was attending this organization's events, and they were not my target demographic. So if you know about the Chamber of Commerce, it's a bunch of small businesses that get together and support each other, hopefully. My clients are Salesforce, LinkedIn, Google, Adobe, Apple. Like they're not at the Chamber of Commerce, right? They're never going to be there. So I then doubled down on event industry organizations where the people, my buyers, were members. And that's where everything started to really work out.
I just had a mental image of Zuckerberg rolling up to the Chamber of Commerce meeting, like, I brought the powdered donuts. Was it my week? Natasha did the orange juice from concentrate again.
Never. That would not happen. Do not put my name with concentrated orange juice. You know how I am about my brand, Adam.
You
Fresh squeezed only.
Honestly, I think you should start like an elite Chamber of Commerce, and it's like 100K to get in, and it's like it's like your 1% Chamber of Commerce club, like that. That's you would rock at that. So obviously, there's a lot that goes into the whole scaling up process. A big part of it, and I feel like a big fear that a lot of entrepreneurs have that start off as solopreneurs, is letting go of responsibility, delegating.
Ooh, I love this question. I can feel it coming already.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Oh
because,
my God.
Like, how did you feel about that? I know how I dealt with it. I wasn't good at it. I was like, I'll just do all this. I'm quicker, faster, better, and smarter than everyone. So
this is the most amazing thing. Before 2013, I thought every client needed to speak to me and they wouldn't buy if they didn't. I thought that because I was a classically trained violinist, a jazz vocalist, I knew all these musicians and artists that we were providing to our corporate clients, that I had to be the one. And I had interns and part-time people working for me at that time. But then I finally hired someone and I let her not only talk to our clients, but like talk to major booking agencies like William Morris Endeavor to find talent for these things. And as I let go and I taught her, my life started freeing up. And I was able to let go of the ego. And that's the part I think people are not able to let go as much of, is the ego and the adulation, right?
Yeah.
So the second thing that happened that is so important. Now, I did not have scaling or growth in mind, but I was so annoyed. If you were going to call me, Adam, and say, hey, I need a string quartet for my wedding, I would be like, okay. And I'd get a piece of paper and I would start filling out everything that you were telling me. And then the next time we talk, I would fill out on the piece of paper, scratch out some stuff. Then you were like, I'm ready to book. Then I would put in a nice little Microsoft Word, the contract. Then I'd have to turn it into a PDF. I'd send it to you. And back in 2013, you would either print it out, sign it, and fax it back, or you might have put it in an envelope with the paper check deposit. Then I would send an email to my accountant to send you an invoice. I mean, it was like this laborious 3 to 4 times of repeated entry. And it was making me crazy. So without knowing about systems and processes, and without knowing that I was then, what I was about to do was going to unveil the ability to scale and grow, I created a system within Salesforce to run my company from the moment someone comes into our world to well after their event is over. And it got rid of all of those things. I was also able to brain dump all of our talent, tags, information, contact, so that somebody didn't have to ask Natasha, what opera singer can do, pieces in Italian and German? Basically, any opera singer can do that because that's what they learn. But instead of asking me and me having to come up with that solution, you can type it into our Salesforce organization and find out yourself, or you can
Wow.
search our website. But delegation is the key to freedom. And if you can unlock your ego from yourself, get over yourself, I might be talking to you, Adam, then your world can really expand. And Inc. magazine, the first year I was on the Inc. 5000, wrote an article about me because I tested for strengths. My number one strength was delegation.
Wow.
So that was, I think my first year was 2017 on the Inc. 5000. So from 2013 to 2017, I went from not delegating, not letting anyone do anything, to letting go pretty much completely.
Okay. I mean, that's huge. And that's a journey that all of us are going to have to take if we have plans to scale. Like, what about the time factor? Like, I talk about it all the time. My schedule is my main form of compensation. Like,
Mhm.
I'll gladly take less money. And I love my 4-day per week work schedule. I'm usually done by 3 p.m. I take my kids to school. I pick them up from school. Like, that's a big part. Like, do you feel like if you're going to officially scale, do you need to, like, all right, the next year, I just got to work a bunch
No,
more, or like,
no,
no, you can still handle the
no.
schedule. Okay.
I'm in a position right now, and by the way, I have an incredible life, but I don't like take private jets anywhere, and I don't like huge vacations or designer bags. So I live a pretty frugal life. I get to do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. Period. End of story. And it's taken me a while to get there. Now, what I love to do is create and work and ideate. So whatever. But I think when you get into that mindset of delegation, you do have to spend some time pouring your brain into a system to collect the information. And then you have to enable the people that are working with you, whether 1099 contractors or full time employees, the power to make their own decisions. My team, right now, somebody could say at 11 o'clock, which is coming up here soon, I'm leaving for 2 hours. I'm getting my hair cut. I encourage that because I want them to have the freedom in their job, because I know that they'll do better for me and for the company if they're able to honestly live this life that they want to live. And so when someone's like, Natasha, I'm getting my hair cut at 2, that's okay, right? I'm like, that's okay. And I'd like you to put it in the Slack channel for everyone to see. A, so they know where you're going or that you're going to be gone. And B, to give everyone else permission to do the same. And
Yeah.
everybody works so hard, and they are, we have metrics to manage. I trust everyone implicitly. And if I don't, they're not the right fit.
And I've been able to interact with your team members, and like, you can tell that they vibe with you, you vibe with them. And you can see the trust factor there, and they're like, everybody's cool. And they're like, there's respect there. And I think that's super awesome. So that's something that you should definitely be proud of.
I
Um,
am.
you've mentioned a couple tools, Salesforce and
Mhm,
Slack.
mhm.
Are there any other go-to tools or systems that you feel have really helped you with your scalability?
So Salesforce refers to me as an app developer, which is crazy because I'm not what you would traditionally think of. But I basically use that CRM in a way that it wasn't designed or built to do. They tell me we use it in a much more sophisticated way than they even do. So I kind of double down and put all my eggs, for the most part, in that basket. I could recreate it on another CRM or off on my own. So it's not like we would die if Salesforce died. Um, hopefully they don't go out like Facebook and Instagram did for a whole day. Knock wood. Everything's backed up. That Slack is our main communication tool. When we have a big project, we use Asana.
Okay.
I've tried Trello, and for some things, Trello's fun, but it's not right for what we are doing. But I'm very technically forward. I love technology. So, I think I may have told you I just downloaded this new app called Shift that has really it's been very intriguing. It takes all of your communication apps and puts them in one window.
Nice.
So that's an idea. It's pretty inexpensive. I'm still getting used to it. There's always going to be, a bump when you're used to going to all these different windows and apps to work. But I
Yeah.
would say, and we invested a lot of money in the Salesforce app that I created. So
Yeah, I'm familiar with Salesforce for sure. And like they've got a great product. Like the customization that they allow, like you said, like you can really make it fit you exactly what you want.
mhm,
It's pretty darn awesome. They've got a great culture in that company too. So that's
mhm.
a lot of good things going there. All right. Let's dial it back into podcasting as we kind of hit the home stretch here. You're somebody that's really plugged into the business world. You know, a lot of just people that are really awesome entrepreneurs. You talk to many fascinating entrepreneurs, shameless plug. Like what's really got your eye from a business perspective? What opportunities are out there in the podcasting space that you're like interested in? I know you're still kind of newer to the
Yeah,
podcasting game. You're still figuring it out, but what's like, ooh, this is an interesting thing that I see so-and-so doing. I'm
yeah.
intrigued by that.
I like the idea. And if we created one for entire productions, the idea that Josh Kopel has done with his business business restaurant podcast, it's 5 minutes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So he interviews one person on 5 topics, has his editor splice it up and pushes it out. That's bite size information. I would do that for entire productions, interview our clients and our vendors, ask them 5 questions, splay that out. I'm not sure if I would do that for fascinating entrepreneurs unless it was an addition to what I was doing with my half-hour show. The other thing that is really interesting to me, I did not start this podcast to monetize it, right? It is a vehicle for connection, introductions, building a list. It's kind of an inner world. But now that I'm looking at John Lee Dumas's monthly, I mean, I think 80% of his over 1.5 or $1.7 million in revenue is from sponsorships.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to Lewis Howe's podcast too. He
Yep.
does the longest podcast. And honestly, he's such an intriguing person. I would really like to have him on my podcast. More than that, I'd like to be on his because someone just recently told me I would never get on his podcast. And you know what that makes me think? Oh no, get out of the way. I'm going to get on that podcast just because you put that, obstruction in front of me.
Now,
But he does a
rumor
lot
has
of
it
ads.
you can pay like for both for JLD and for Lewis. You if you're willing to pay, they'll put you on the show if you're a good fit. So that's something to explore.
I didn't know that, but so anyway, what I was going to say about Lewis's podcast is what makes me wonder if it would ever work for me is there's so much ad copy or ad. I mean, I don't know how many minutes it is. I haven't measured
Yeah.
it. I mean, I guess you can skip through it, but that is an intriguing possibility for me.
Well,
It's just
I,
I'm on the precipice of that.
yeah, I think you could do really well with all that because like with your core
Like Slack and
business.
Salesforce, they need to sponsor me.
Exactly. You have all these relationships through your core business.
Mhm.
A lot of that is like, hey, like that's it. So much easier
I'll
of a
call up Mark
pathway.
Benioff and ask him what he feels
See,
about that.
like that these people, and like that's way easier than me DMing them on Instagram, going, "Hey, you don't know me, and you never talk to me, and you probably won't even listen to this DM." So there's potential there for you to have that kind of a monetization route. So something to think about. But yeah, I think your
By the way,
vision for your
Salesforce just
show.
bought Slack. Maybe they'll buy me.
There you go. They'll just buy Natasha Miller. You're like, all right. All right. So Natasha Miller of Fascinating Entrepreneurs. I like to end the show kind of rewinding back to like Natasha Miller starting as a podcaster. If you had to relaunch Fascinating Entrepreneurs from day one, is there anything you do differently? And then also in that same vein, like what advice would you give to newer people that are just getting started today?
The advice, first of all, that I would give to someone just starting today is just do it. Just do it. You can call me and interview me for 10, 15 minutes to get over the hump. Once you've done it once, you're like, oh, this isn't really that hard. And okay, if I were to do it differently, because Josh got it into my mind that I'm going to listen to the first couple episodes and think they're crap. By the way, he was my number one interview, my first interview, that I'll listen to it. I made sure that when I listen back to it, that I am really proud. So that was a little bit of the time that I waited, right? I was listening to other shows. I was kind of getting intel. I think the changes that I would have made, I'm making already.
Yeah.
In the show, less sort of self ads in the beginning. I was doing sort of a mid-roll ad, got rid of that. I thought it would be cool to do some like music in between segments like NPR does. No.
You're streamlining. Like that happens to so many. We're podcast listener fans first. We're like, oh, these are what my favorite people do. Like I love, well, the first podcast I ever listened to was called I Love Marketing, Joe Polish and Dean Jackson, like marketing OG guru guys. And they name their episodes the one about blah, 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 whatever the topic is. So my health show, I'm like, I'm going to name all in honor of Joe Polish. I'm going to name all my episodes the one about intermittent fasting, the one about losing 100 pounds. I got to like episode 7. I'm like, this is harder than I thought. And it's kind of getting annoying. Pivot. Let's hit the pivot button, Natasha.
Yep.
So what are some of the other pivots that you've made so far?
So I was on Anchor, which was free, and it's kind of got a slick UI. It's nice. It's easy to use. But then I learned that Anchor is like for the less than, and I don't want to be there. I mean, I don't know if that's actually true. And then also like they're owned by Spotify and they have, they own your content. Really, that also may not actually be 100% true. But what they don't have and what I'm finding very useful is analytics. So I moved to Captivate.
Yep.
And I was looking between Captivate and Libsyn.
Yep.
Honestly, Libsyn had such a great, they had great, people love them, but their user interface to me, and I'm all about the experience, the aesthetics, it did not even come close to rivaling Captivate. So I really had to balance, like, does it need to look good? Okay, for me it does, but also I'm getting great analytics from Captivate. So had I started over, I went free because Josh told me that's what he was using at the time, and it was easy and it worked. But you can't tell who the hell is listening to you and other things.
Yeah. Well, I always say a podcast that has been launched is better than a podcast that has never been launched. So a lot of people start on Anchor and they learn the lessons. And I'm not a huge fan of it. Like it does get shamed a little bit. And I'll tell you where, from my standpoint, the shaming comes from. I've got a lot of podcaster friends, my pod pals, that they have their show that shows up on Anchor and it's pirated. It's not them. It's somebody who records their show, launches it, like relaunches it on Anchor and starts running ads and they're making money. So that's a little sketchy. That's where I'm like, I'm out. Like they're owned by Spotify. They should be able to fix this because this isn't cool. Like it happened to Joe Rogan. Like, like he's not one of my pod pals. I mean, he could be if you want, Joe, if you're listening, like let's grab a coffee, do some push-ups or something. But if it can happen to him, and he didn't even notice for a while, that's the thing, is like it's just rolling through and there's all these ads. My friend Allison Melody, she's got a show called Food Heals, big like vegan podcast. somebody pirates it and starts running ads for like McDonald's on there and stuff like that. So like
Wow.
she was alerted right away. So that's where Anchor kind of comes in. And when you compare Captivate and Libsyn, the best like user interface description I give people, like I'm Libsyn, it works well for me. I have no reason to really change because it's like it's all there. It's not worth the effort of changing for me. But if you talk about like video game systems, Captivate is like PlayStation 5, like the look and the feel. And Libsyn's kind of like Frogger on Atari a little bit. Like, you're just trying to like dodge those semi trucks. And
I can't do that. I can't do it.
So, and I love Libsyn. The analytics are the key. You can see what's happening. Both those platforms make it very easy to get everywhere you need to be easily with just some button clicks. That's huge. Like you said, like I run into so many people, Natasha, and they're like, I didn't even realize I've been podcasting for a year. I'm not even on Spotify. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, wow.
So little things like that make a huge difference. But no, I think those tips are great for any newbie podcasters out there. Well done. All right, let's shout you out a little bit for somebody like me. Maybe they want to interview Natasha on their podcast. We've got several thousand podcasters that listen in every single episode. So that, a lot of them are business podcasters. Obviously I think Natasha would be a great interview for you guys. So if you want to get into your world, if they want to connect with you, if they want to invite you on their show, where do they go to make all that happen?
My brand new, beautiful, incredible website, officialnatashamiller.com.
officialnatashamiller.com. I like it. And make sure you guys check out Fascinating Entrepreneurs. Great show. Natasha is another she's one of my favorite types of interviewers. She's very curious and she puts on a great conversation. And I think that's important to the art of podcasting. So I'm a fan. All right, Natasha, as expected, this was a fascinating conversation. I appreciate you. I know you could be doing a lot of things with your time right now, and you chose to spend some time here with us and my audience. So I appreciate that investment, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much for everything.
All right, Pod Pals, lots to think about. This is a topic that we've never really dove this deep on in scaling before. So if you have questions, reach out to Natasha. She is very accessible on social media, on Instagram, kick her a message on her new website and ask away. And, the ideas that we put out there today, again, let them marinate a little bit, but let's take some action on this. If you really are feeling some of those pain points, if you feel that frustration, that like you're ready to grow, let's take some action on that. All right. So as always, I'm going to send you guys out into the world of podcasting, wishing you 3 things: health, happiness, and many downloads. I will see you on the next